On today's show, is the border really about to reopen? We're going to talk with a lawmaker from Fort Erie who is worried that Canada's COVID testing requirement will keep a lot of people from really being able to go back and forth.
Plus, you might not want to know what testing found in the water you drink, but it can also help you clean it up. We're going to talk with the group helping you get that information.
And 50 years after Attica, a new examination of the riot and violent retaking of the prison, thanks to a documentary on Showtime. And we're going to have the director here live.
We'll start here, though. Starting this coming Monday, Canadians will be able to cross the bridges into the U.S. for the first time in almost 20 months for what's been deemed non-essential travel.
They'll have to be fully vaccinated. Now, they will not have to show proof of a negative test to get into the United States. But just like any of you who've maybe tried to travel to Canada over the last couple of months, you do have to have a negative test to go north. And that has been really a source of frustration for people now on both sides of the border, especially trying to time out that test because it has to be within 72 hours of your trip into Canada. You have to make sure you get the results in time. That means that Canadians who plan to spend more than 72 hours here in the U.S. will need to get tested here before they can go home.
Congressman Brian Higgins has repeatedly called it redundant since everyone traveling is fully vaccinated. He is pushing the Canadian government to get that requirement removed, and he's joined by lawmakers in Canada as well, including our guest tonight, Nick Dubanow, a councilman in Fort Erie. Nick, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Kate. How are you doing this evening?
We're doing really well. Councillor, what are you hearing from people who you represent as they are now getting ready for this reopening on Monday? And tell us about how big a challenge that testing requirement is.
Well, first of all, Monday is a very good day because it's been a very, very long time that we haven't been able to have that connection between our two communities on either side of the border. As I often tell individuals who are not from this area, we have a binational community, and this closure has been extremely difficult, particularly for individuals who have family and friends on either side of the border. We've effectively been cut off. The biggest issue that we're running into with the testing requirement, not only the amount of time that it takes to get the tests, but ultimately it's the cost, especially for testing, particularly on this side of the border. You're looking at $150 to $200 per test. You know, to have a family of four who wants to go over and see, grandma and grandpa for Thanksgiving coming up at the end of the month. I mean, you're talking $600 to $800 in testing alone just to be able to return to Canada. Assuming you're fully vaccinated and able to travel over into the United States. So it's a big barrier for being able to unify those connections that we've had and that, ultimately we took for granted for so long. And now that the border's opening back up, we're trying to normalize that and hopefully see that connection be reestablished back and forth across the border.
Yeah, and Congressman Brian Higgins has written a letter to the Canadian ambassador about this. We know members of Parliament have sent letters to the Prime Minister on your side of the border as well. But have you seen any sort of response from the government on what might be ahead for the testing requirement?
Nothing definitive. I do know from speaking with other municipal counterparts across Ontario, including the Mayor of Niagara Falls, they passed a resolution making a similar request to discontinue the border testing requirement. I have a motion coming up at a special council meeting on Monday that we're going to discuss here in Fort Erie as well. It's being able to unify those connections and be able to see our friends and family again. This is something we've been fighting for quite a long time. And when we have access to vaccines, and right now Ontario, I believe under our 12 and over is just under 90% has at least one dose of vaccine. When you're talking fully vaccinated travelers, we have vaccine certificate requirements on this side of the border. We have businesses that can operate at full capacity as long as they verify proof of vaccination. So at least in my opinion, I completely agree with Congressman Higgins. It seems redundant, especially when we're sending the message to individuals that vaccination is the path forward. We have bingo halls here in Fort Erie that typically cater to American clients that aren't opening until that testing requirement is removed. Yet right now they could operate at full capacity with proof of vaccination. So at least to me, it seems to lack common sense at this point in the pandemic. I understand that we tend to be quite cautious on this side of the border. There's a lot of angst about the unknown and where we're headed. But at least in my opinion anyway, I think it's time. We've been separated for so long, and believe me, I would love nothing more than to come over to Buffalo. It's a beautiful city. I have friends, I have family over there. I'm looking forward to coming back, and I know so many of my American friends are looking forward to coming over here as well.
Nick, when we try to understand why this is in place, we know that on your side of the border, people really are split on this issue of requiring the negative test. I want to show this to our viewers. There was a survey that was done that found 55% of Canadians actually support keeping the testing requirement in place. Now, we should point out there's a big divide here, though, between those who say they want to travel and those who say they won't travel. Among those who plan to come here to the U.S., 7 in 10 say get rid of the testing. But overall, it seems the Canadian public, for some reason, wants to keep this requirement. How much more difficult does that make your job in trying to convince the government to change this?
Well, this has pretty much been the story of the entire pandemic. Even when it came to actually opening up our side and allowing travel onto the side of the border, public opinion was definitely split, and that tends to, at least on some level or another, drive policy. It's the same thing I mentioned back in April when I presented the an original motion about getting transparency on the plan to open the border. Unless you live along the frontier here, you guys in Western New York, us here in the Niagara region, unless you live here, you may not truly grasp just what a barrier this is and how it's divided our communities. Prior to this, individuals moved back and forth. If you had a Nexus card, crossing the border was like going through a toll booth on the thruway. And it's, to have that barrier and that block. And when I leave our store that we own here in Fort Erie every time I see downtown Buffalo, and it's like it's so close yet so far away. And so the only thing I can mention to those individuals is, I appreciate their concern. This has been difficult for all of us over the last 20 months, but try to put yourself into our shoes here. We've been separated from our friends. We've been separated from our family. Even during the summer where restrictions have been lifted, we still weren't able to go over and see our friends and vice versa. So as more individuals are vaccinated, as we're seeing the benefit of vaccination moving forward, this is really something that it's a barrier to unifying our communities. And in my opinion, I think it's time to eliminate it.
We've been chatting with Nick Dubanow, a member of the Town Council in Fort Erie, representing Ward 2. Nick, thanks so much again for joining us.
Thank you, Michael and Kate. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Next up on the Town Hall tonight, since last spring, we've spent a lot of time here on the Town Hall talking about unemployment. This is a story that really stands out.
Earlier this year, the daughter of a woman from Depew reached out to us about issues that she was having getting her benefits. Well, those issues still haven't been resolved, so she emailed us again this week, really asking for help.
2 on Your Side's Kelly Dudzik joins us now with some answers. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kate. I talked with Sally Hill today. She lost her job when the pandemic hit, and she was receiving unemployment benefits, but they suddenly stopped in December. Then in January, she got a letter from the New York State Department of Labor telling her she was a fraud victim. Her account has been frozen ever since, and Sally's daughter says it's causing stress and anxiety and says at her age, her mom shouldn't have to deal with that. When they first emailed me in June, I told them to contact their state senator and assembly person for help, since that seems to be working for a lot of people. That got them a call from the DOL, but they got cut off on the phone and the account is still frozen.
I mean, I have to keep on going with my life. I can't take this, put me down.
And it's been very stressful for you.
It's been stressful. Sometimes I can't even think straight, but then I snap out of it.
So I contacted the New York State Department of Labor this morning. They gave me a link to forward to Sally for her to file a fraud claim. They also gave me a new phone number, new to her, for her to call it. But they contacted her about the fraud in January. So the state should really already know about this, Kate and Michael.
Yeah, and Kelly, what happens if the online form and calling that new number just don't work out for her?
Sure. So if those options don't work for Sally, the Department of Labor asked me for her contact info. She was okay with me giving it to them. So then they will forward that to their Office of Special Investigations. We've done that before with people, and people have gotten their benefits pretty quickly.
Fingers crossed this time around. Kelly Dudzik reporting for us. Thanks, Kelly.
Sure.